There is an insane amount of international men's 15s rugby going to be played this year, and teams are going to have to travel across the globe to play those games. In this video, we're going to start off looking at the All Blacks schedule for this year and give you my thoughts about some of those clashes, what might happen, and how many continents they have to travel to play their matches this year. So most of the men's international 15s this year have a packed schedule of rugby, and it's going to be a very exciting year for all of us rugby fans, that's for sure. And I thought I'd start off today having a look at the All Blacks schedule for 2024. Now, Scott Razor Robertson is the new head coach of the All Blacks. He's put his team together. It includes Wayne Smith, the fantastic All Black number 10, and also he's going to be in a performance analyst role for the All Black team this year, which is going to be very, very interesting. I'm a big fan of Wayne Smith as a player, also as a coach and as an advisor. So I think he's going to really help Scott Razor Robertson in that role. And it's going to be a really interesting role for Robertson this year because he's going to be up against it. The All Black fans are not going to take too many losses before they start putting the pressure on him, if that's going to be the case. So he's going to have to hit the ground running. And there's not going to be too much of a time to be able to experiment too much with the schedule that the All Blacks have got set for this year. Now, the All Blacks are going to kick off this year in July against England, and England are going to tour New Zealand for the first time since 2014. That's right, it's been 8 years since the English went to New Zealand. They played a 3 test match series against the All Blacks that year, and they lost 3-0, but some of the games were a lot closer than that scoreline of the series would give you the impression. They lost one game by 1 point, and they lost another one by 20-15. So it wasn't all one-way traffic for the All Blacks against England 8 years ago in New Zealand. But as we all know, rugby's changed a lot in 8 years. The teams are very different, the coaching panels are very different, and we can look forward to a very different series in New Zealand. Unfortunately, it's only a 2-game series, so we will see the decider later on in the year when the All Blacks travel to England to play a one-off game at Twickenham against England there. I think that series in New Zealand is going to be really interesting from both teams' perspective. I think both England and New Zealand might take an opportunity to bleed in some new players in those particular games because, let's face it, it's a great opportunity. I think that Steve Borthwick's going to have an opportunity to take a few new players on tour and see how they go for this English team. And Scott Robertson, who's going to be starting off his tenure as the All Black coach, will want to get some idea on those players that he's going to be putting in his preferred squad for this particular year. Now, the All Blacks are going to be playing 15 test matches this year across the world. It's going to be a very, very tough schedule. And the All Blacks are going to want to have a good amount of depth in their squad to be able to handle injuries, fatigue, and everything else that might pop up during this campaign. So I think it's going to be very interesting to see how Razor Robertson starts off with his tenure as the All Blacks coach, what team he decides to pick, and whether or not we see a squad that's going to be moving on a rotation basis. Let me know what you think Razor Robertson might do in that first test match. I think the All Blacks are going to be too good for England at home in New Zealand. I think we're going to see a new era of All Black rugby in a different way under Razor Robertson. We saw that at the Crusaders. Yes, international rugby is very different, but I think if anybody is able to adapt and become more adept at international rugby coaching, it is Scott Razor Robertson. And I think with his great team around him, he's got Jason Ryan in there looking after the forwards again. He's got some very impressive team members that he knows well, he trusts, and they work together, and they're a proven force to be reckoned with. So I think Robertson is going to do a good job. Now, the All Blacks are going to play their 3rd game of this year at home as well against Fiji, and I'm really happy to see this game taking place. I think Fiji have earned the right to be playing the top teams in the world on a regular basis. And this just goes to show that the All Blacks are recognising and also appreciating and respecting Fiji rugby at this level as well. So it's great to see Fiji getting a test match against New Zealand at home, and that's going to be the All Blacks' 3rd test of the year. Now, there is a provision in there at the moment that 1 week later in Fiji there may be a 2nd match against the All Blacks. That hasn't been confirmed yet, so we'll have to wait and see what happens. but it could be a chance that the All Blacks get to play Fiji once at home and once in Fiji as the start of this year's campaign for the All Blacks. How do I think the All Blacks are going to go against Fiji? I think they're going to be too good for them, particularly in the set pieces of play. I think that's where the tendency has been for Fiji to fall over a little bit against the top teams, but we'll have to wait and see, of course, and how they perform in that either one-off test or if they get a second test in Fiji. That'll be interesting to see how they bounce back after that first game. But I expect the All Blacks to have too much in their set pieces, and also their structure of their game will be too good for Fiji. But let's face it, it'll be a very entertaining encounter. Those Fiji players have got so much athleticism and ability, so you never ever write them off, that's for sure, and they're only going to get better as far as I'm concerned. Now, after the All Blacks have finished with Fiji, they will travel and start getting on the road, and this is where things will get tough for the All Blacks. They will take off first to South Africa and play the world champions at home over a 2-match series. Probably a game in Cape Town and probably a game in Johannesburg. That's how it's looking at the moment, although I don't think those two venues have been confirmed for the All Blacks travelling to South Africa. That 1-point victory to South Africa in the Rugby World Cup final last year is going to be very, very strong in the All Blacks' minds. They're going to want to go out after revenge, and Scott Razor Robertson is going to want to start off his coaching campaign against South Africa with a win in South Africa. That would be something that absolutely pleases him and his supporters. I think it's going to be a tough task, of course. I think South Africa are going to bounce back. They're going to get up for this game against the All Blacks, and I think it's going to be yet another one of those amazing encounters between these two great rugby playing nations. So expect everything and anything in these two games in South Africa, and may the best team win on the day. Now, after the All Blacks have played those two matches in South Africa, they will take on Argentina in a 2-game series, and at the moment the venue for those games is unknown. The All Blacks are trying to have those games played in the United States, which of course would be great for rugby in the US, and an opportunity for the All Blacks to perhaps reduce some of that travel requirement on their schedule this year. But venues in Miami and Los Angeles are being sought after at the moment for the All Blacks to play those potential games against Argentina, and we'll just have to wait and see a little bit longer until those venues are confirmed. But after taking on South Africa, New Zealand will play Argentina in a 2-game series, and I'm picking New Zealand to be too good for Argentina in that series. And I think by the time we get to that stage of the All Blacks season, I think Scott Razor Robertson is going to have his team dialed in, and barring any major injuries, I'm sure he's going to be able to put out his best squad for those particular games against Argentina, unless he wants to rest players for later on in the season. So after that Argentinian series, the All Blacks will do the long trip back home down under to play against Australia in their very first Bledisloe Cup game for the year, part of the Rugby Championship as well. And they'll head back to New Zealand, and the venue of those games is yet to be decided. It could be Forsyth Bar Stadium in Dunedin, or it could be even Wellington. We'll have to wait and see what comes out on that. And then a week later, the All Blacks are off to Australia to play in the second game of that series, so they're not getting much rest, that's for sure. And then after playing those 2 games down under in the second game in Australia, the All Blacks are back off to Europe again. Yes, they're heading to the UK, and they're going to be playing England for the 3rd time in the year. That game's going to be played at Twickenham in London, and it commences the autumn series for the All Blacks in Europe. So they'll head off to play England first. Next up will be Ireland in Dublin. Then they've got France, and then they've got one other team that hasn't been decided yet from the home nation. So obviously it's going to be Scotland, Wales, or it could even be Italy. And we'll have to wait and see who that other team is going to be for the All Blacks to play in that series when they go to the UK and Europe at the end of the year. And then on the way home from Europe, they're going to be playing a game in Japan. The All Blacks have come up with a collaboration opportunity with Japan Rugby to play a match in Japan. So Eddie Jones's Cherry Blossom team will get an opportunity this year to play the All Blacks in Japan, and that will be a huge game for Japanese rugby, that's for sure, and a great way for the All Blacks to play their last game of the season. So there's a couple of things that we don't know about the All Blacks season this year. We don't know where some of these games are going to be played, particularly the Argentinian games. We don't know whether in fact they're going to be played in North America or not. And we don't know who that final game on the All Blacks Northern Tour is going to be against at the end of the season. All Blacks have only played 15 test matches in a season twice before, once in 2008, where they won 13 of their 15 games in that season. And in that season in 2008, their losses came against South Africa and Australia. In 2021, they did it again. They played 15 test matches. This time they won 12 out of 15. They lost to South Africa, Ireland and France were the 3 games they lost in that season. Now, I've read a lot of reports from those 2 years, and the coaching and the playing staff all said that it was a monumental challenge taking on 15 test matches in a season. The travelling was very demanding, and the opportunity for coaches to look after the squad when it came to injury and fitness was very, very difficult. So that's going to be something that's a complexity for Scott Razor Robertson and his team this year as the All Blacks take on 15 test matches across 2024. So there we go, a huge season ahead for the All Blacks, and I'm very interested to know your views on this one. How do you think they're going to go against England down under in New Zealand? Do you think the English are going to give the All Blacks a hard time at home, and do you think that's going to put a lot of pressure on Scott Razor Robertson in those games? How do you think the All Blacks are going to go against Fiji in that test match, or possibly 2 test matches down there as well? And then in South Africa, the All Blacks up against the world champions in South Africa and trying to revenge that loss in the Rugby World Cup final. That's going to be a huge 2 encounter games in South Africa for the All Blacks. And then it's going to be Argentina in a yet to be named destination for those 2 games. I think the All Blacks are going to have too much for Argentina, but we'll have to wait and see how they come out this year with Philippe Cantaponi as their new coach of Argentina. See if he can make things a little bit different than what Michael Cheika did. And then after Argentina, New Zealand go home to play against Australia in a 2-match series, Bledisloe Cup and Rugby Championship. 1 game in New Zealand, 1 game in Australia. Let me know how you think they're going to go in that one. And then, of course, after that, it's back off to Europe and to the UK, where they play England, Ireland, France, and another country who's yet to be determined, before heading off to Japan to play that 1 test match on the way home to New Zealand. So a packed season this year for the All Blacks. Interested to know your views on how you think it's going to go. And how many games do you think Scott Razor Robertson is going to be given by the All Black public and the All Black fans before he comes under any mounting pressure if he happens to lose a few of those first games in this year's season? So there we go, we've got plenty of international rugby championships and competitions coming up this year. I'm going to be doing a separate video on all the different championships that are happening across the world this year for us to keep our eye on as rugby fans. It's going to be very, very interesting. Well, that's it for this particular video. If you like my content, why not hit the subscribe button, give the video a thumbs up, share it with all your rugby mates, and I'll be seeing you again really soon in the next video. Until then, stay well, stay safe. It's time to say adios from Mexico, and I'll see you all again in the next video. Until then, bye for now.